In our gospel, we have the story of the 9 out of 10 and the 1 out of 10. And so there's 10 lepers who come to Jesus, and they're all trapped in the awfulness of an incurable disease. They're all trapped in their little world, where a little world that says to them, it has a voice. If it had a voice, it would say to them, nothing can change. You are trapped in this world. Take the desires in your heart for a deeper and a richer life, tamp them down, stomp on them, kill them, because they can never happen. No change can happen. No growth will happen. You are trapped in this world, and you cannot live fully. And you will have to stay in this world. That's the voice of their disease. And then Jesus comes. And Jesus blows all of that to pieces. He says to them, no, you can grow. No, you can change. No, you do not have to tamp down the desires of your heart for something more. Those can rise up. No, the visions and the dreams in your hearts are not some kind of illusion. Those are something to follow. Jesus sets them free. But then there's the 9 out of the 10. And they just want to go back to the life they had before. They just want to go home and forget the whole thing. They're not impressed by the fact that they've been set free from bondage. They want to go back to just the way it was. But then there's the 1 out of 10. And he's fascinated by this Jesus. Something about this person who set him free. He can't just go back to the way it was. He can't just go home and just be who he was before and forget about the power of God that set him free. He has to go back to Jesus. And he has to get more. He wants his life to change. He doesn't want to go back to the way he was before his illness. He wants his life to change and be different now. And he's got this sense that Jesus could change things. He doesn't have to go back to the way it was. That's why we baptize babies. It's why we baptize people. In the doctrine of the church, we say that we've all been affected by original sin. And what that means is these incredibly beautiful, innocent little children, it means that they have somebody else's sin has hurt them already. Somebody else's sin has already touched their lives. And we know that. I can tell you that. I can tell you that just from the culture we live in. Because they've been born into a culture that is a mixture of sense and nonsense, of grace and sin. And they've already been touched by it. They've already been affected by the sins of other people. They've already suffered from it. We live in a culture, the job of the culture is to be a bridge between the best in the human heart, the very best in the human spirit. It's to be a bridge that can bring the best of the human spirit to them so that they can be the best people they can be. They can be fully alive and they can live lives of fullness. And already that culture, we know that culture is going to break down, and it will also bring to them some of the worst of human beings as well. And so we know they've already been touched by the sins of others that have nothing to do with them. And one of the things that we believe about baptism is that it is a setting free from that sin of others. And part of the way that it does that is that it releases us from the little prison, like the people in the gospel. It releases us from that little prison. And the voice of original sin and the voice of Satan and the voice of the worst in the world that says to us, I can't grow. I can't change. I'm going to have to make a little shrine here to the status quo, because the voice of Satan, the voice of sin is this. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. That's never the voice of God. That's the voice of evil that we want these children to be free from. We don't want them to grow up in a world where the world says to them, and they take that voice into themselves that says, well, it's just the way it is. There's no point in trying to learn about other races and trying to better the relations between people, because people are prejudiced, where they're filled with prejudice, so that's just the way the world is. That's the voice of Satan. That's the voice of sin that we want them to be set free from. We don't want them to give in to the voice that they're going to hear all the time that says there's no point in trying to free women from the violence, because men and women, there's the war between the sexes, and it'll always be that way, and there's no growth, and there's no change, and there's no hope. And so that's just the way it is. And I agree absolutely 100% with the theologian who said that the voice of Satan is, that's just the way it is. Because in that voice there is no hope. There is no acknowledgement that Jesus can come and heal, that Jesus can set free, that change is possible, that growth is possible. That we don't have to spend our lives painting ourselves into, because this is what sin does. It paints us, we paint ourselves into a little corner that we don't have to be in, and we decide we're going to live a life that is less than full. And we say to ourselves, that's just the way it is. And that is the voice of sin that baptism is to set these kids free from. We want to stack the original sin, the sin of others that affects these children already. That stacks the deck against them in life. And what we do here today is we change the odds. We change the odds for these children so that they will not grow up imprisoned in the lie of sin. That's just the way it is. Instead, they will grow up with hearts that hear a voice. No, Jesus is the yes of God. It's not the no of God. Jesus is the yes of God. And we're not going to take the dreams of a fuller life and tamp them down and stomp on them. We're going to raise them up. That's why we baptize these children, is because that voice, we want the voice of original sin it's not ever going to disappear. Have you noticed that? That voice of original sin never disappears, but we can drown it out with a louder voice from Jesus Christ. That's why we baptize babies, and that's why we bring them, once they're baptized, that's just the first step. It's why we bring them to children's liturgy of the Word. It's why we take them to the atrium. It's why we have programs of religious education. It's why they go to confirmation. It's why they grow up in a community. It's so that we can have a louder voice, a voice that drowns out that voice and says, you do not have to be imprisoned in the prison of, well, that's just the way things are.